What's up, everyone? Olawale here. Let's get real about addiction. Do you think addiction is just a lack of willpower, or that quitting is as simple as just saying no? If those thoughts have crossed your mind, you're in the right place. Today, we're busting 7 of the biggest myths about addiction, with real science-backed evidence. By the end of these next 8 minutes, I guarantee you'll see addiction in a whole new light. So, are you ready to have your perspective expanded and some serious myths busted? Let's do this. Alright, let's kick things off with a big one. Addiction is a choice. The idea here is that people to become addicted and therefore they can simply just stop whenever they want. This myth implies a moral failing, a weakness of character rather than what addiction truly is, a complex brain disorder. It's a dangerous oversimplification that places blame squarely on the individual, ignoring the powerful biological forces at play. Now, it's true that the initial decision to try a substance or engage in a certain behavior might involve an element of choice for some. But here's the crucial distinction: nobody to develop an addiction. As exposure continues, especially with highly addictive substances or behaviors, profound changes start happening in the brain. These aren't minor tweaks. We're talking about a fundamental rewiring of the brain's most critical systems, particularly the reward circuitry. This system, designed to motivate us for survival, gets hijacked. Addictive substances and behaviors flood this system with dopamine far more intensely than natural rewards. Over time, the brain adapts to this overwhelming surge. It starts to produce less dopamine naturally and reduces the number of dopamine receptors. This means the things that used to bring pleasure no longer do, and the person needs the substance or behavior just to feel normal, let alone good. This is not a conscious decision, it's a physiological adaptation. Imaging studies show clear, measurable changes in the brains of individuals with addiction. Chronic substance use alters the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control. When this area is impaired, the ability to just choose to stop is significantly compromised. Therefore, to say addiction is merely a choice is to ignore decades of neuroscience. Next up is a myth that can have truly devastating consequences: the idea that someone has to hit rock bottom before they can start to recover. We've all heard this narrative, often romanticized in movies or stories: the dramatic crisis, the job loss, the arrest, the family ultimatum, that supposedly forces someone to finally seek help. While a crisis can indeed be a catalyst for change for some, waiting for this rock bottom is an incredibly dangerous and often unnecessary gamble. It implies that things have to get as bad as humanly possible before recovery is an option. Think about any other chronic illness like diabetes or heart disease. Would we ever tell someone, "Oh, just wait until you have a massive heart attack or need a limb amputated, you can start treatment"? Of course not. Addiction is no different. It's a progressive illness, and the earlier it's addressed, the better the chances of successful, sustained recovery and the less damage is done along the way. The truth is, early intervention in addiction yields far, far better outcomes. Waiting for a rock bottom often means enduring years of unnecessary suffering, damaged relationships, lost opportunities, and escalating health problems. It also increases the risk of overdose or other severe consequences. The longer an addiction progresses, the more entrenched the brain changes become, and the more difficult the recovery process can be. So what does this mean practically? It means we need to abandon the rock bottom narrative. If you recognize the signs of addiction in yourself or someone you care about, the time to seek help is now. Intervening early can prevent a tremendous amount of pain and significantly improve the prognosis. Let's tackle another common misconception: the idea that addiction is exclusively about substances like drugs and alcohol. Many people think, well, if I'm not using illicit drugs or drinking excessively, I can't possibly be addicted to anything. This is a very narrow and outdated view of what addiction truly encompasses. While substance use disorders are a major part of the picture, they are not the picture. The brain mechanisms underlying addiction can be triggered by more than just chemicals you ingest. The reality is that behavioral addictions are very real and can be just as devastating as substance addictions. We're talking about things like gambling addiction, gaming disorder, compulsive shopping, sex addiction, and even social media or internet addiction. These behaviors, when they become compulsive and out of control despite negative consequences, engage the same brain pathways that are affected by drugs and alcohol. The core issue is the compulsive engagement and loss of control, regardless of the specific thing one is addicted to. Functional MRI, fMRI studies show that behaviors like internet gaming can activate the brain's reward system in a way that is remarkably similar to how substances like cocaine do. This activation of the nucleus accumbens and other parts of the reward pathway is key. When someone engages in these behaviors, there's a release of dopamine, creating a pleasurable sensation or a sense of relief. Over time, just like with substances, the brain can become dependent on these behaviors to achieve that dopamine rush. The person may develop tolerance, needing more and more of the behavior to get the same effect, and experience withdrawal-like symptoms if they try to stop. Understanding that addiction isn't limited to substances is crucial for recognizing when help is needed and for reducing stigma. Chapter 4. Myth number 4. Willpower is enough. The unfair fight. This next myth is closely related to the first one we discussed, but it focuses specifically on the solution. The idea that if you want to quit, sheer willpower is all you need. Just try harder, show some self-control. If you were strong enough, you could beat this. These are common refrains, but they fundamentally misunderstand the nature of addiction and the immense challenge of overcoming it. While a strong desire to change is essential, relying solely on willpower against the force of addiction is like trying to stop a freight train with your bare hands. As we've already touched upon, addiction isn't a simple battle of wills. It's a condition that actively weakens the very brain circuits responsible for self-control and decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, our brain's CEO, gets impaired. So telling someone to just use more willpower is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. This isn't to say personal resolve doesn't matter, it absolutely does, but it's rarely sufficient on its own. Clinical trials have consistently demonstrated that comprehensive treatment approaches are far more effective than relying on willpower alone. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, helps individuals identify and change negative thought patterns and behaviors associated with addiction. Medications for certain addictions like opioid or alcohol use disorder can help rebalance brain chemistry, reduce cravings, and alleviate withdrawal symptoms, making it easier for willpower and therapeutic strategies to take hold. So, while personal commitment is a vital ingredient in recovery, it's not the only one. Recovery is a journey that often requires more than just sheer determination. It requires a strategic, supported approach. Chapter 5. Myth number 5. Relapse means failure, the learning curve of recovery. This myth can be incredibly discouraging for anyone on the path to recovery. The idea that if you slip up or relapse, you've failed, and you might as well give up. It paints recovery as a perfectly linear process where any deviation from continuous abstinence means the entire effort was pointless. This all-or-nothing thinking is not only inaccurate but also deeply damaging, often leading to shame, hopelessness, and a return to full-blown addictive behavior. The reality is that relapse, while certainly not the goal, is a common part of the recovery process for many people. It's more accurately viewed as a setback or a stumble on a long journey, rather than a complete failure. Think of it like learning any complex new skill, whether it's riding a bike or learning a new language. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to fall, you're going to get things wrong. Does that mean you give up entirely? No, you learn from those mistakes and try again. Addiction recovery is a profound process of change, involving rewiring the brain, developing new coping skills, and building a new way of life. It's unrealistic to expect this to happen perfectly without any bumps in the road. A relapse can actually be a critical learning opportunity. It can help the individual and their treatment team identify triggers, weaknesses in their recovery plan, or areas where more support is needed. The key is to get back on track as quickly as possible, with support and without excessive self-blame. Chapter 6. Myth number 6. Only weak people get addicted, the genetics and trauma factor. This is another deeply stigmatizing myth. The notion that addiction only targets people who are weak-willed, morally flawed, or lacking in character. It's a judgment, not a diagnosis, and it completely ignores the complex interplay of factors that contribute to addiction vulnerability. If addiction were simply a matter of strength or weakness, we wouldn't see it affecting people from all walks of life, regardless of their perceived inner fortitude or moral standing. This myth is not only cruel, but also scientifically baseless. The truth is, addiction is an equal opportunity condition, and a significant part of an individual's vulnerability is rooted in factors far beyond their control, particularly genetics. Just like with other chronic diseases such as heart disease or diabetes, there's a strong hereditary component to addiction. Research estimates that genetics can account for a substantial portion, roughly 40 to 60% of a person's risk for developing an addiction. These genetic factors can influence how a person's brain responds to substances, how quickly they develop tolerance, how susceptible they are to cravings, and even aspects of their personality that might predispose them to risk-taking behaviors. Beyond genetics, environmental factors like stress and trauma play an enormous role in addiction vulnerability. Experiencing significant stress, especially chronic stress or early life trauma, like abuse, neglect, or witnessing violence, can profoundly impact brain development and increase the likelihood of developing addiction later in life. Substances or compulsive behaviors can become a maladaptive way of coping with a dysregulated stress response system or the emotional pain stemming from traumatic experiences. This isn't a sign of weakness, it's a human response to overwhelming circumstances. Rather than labeling people as weak, we need to understand that addiction arises from a complex interaction of genetic predispositions, brain chemistry, psychological factors, and environmental influences like trauma and stress. Recognizing these multifaceted roots helps us move from judgment to compassion, and from blame to effective, holistic treatment approaches. Chapter 7. Myth number 7. Addiction can't be treated. The hope of recovery. Our final myth is perhaps one of the most hopeless and, thankfully, one of the most untrue. The idea that once an addict, always an addict, implying that addiction is a life sentence with no possibility of effective treatment or lasting recovery. This belief can be incredibly demoralizing for individuals struggling with addiction and their families, suggesting that any effort to change is ultimately futile. It fosters a sense of despair, and can prevent people from even attempting to seek help. But here's the good news, and it's backed by a mountain of evidence addiction treatable. Just like other chronic conditions such as asthma or hypertension, addiction can be managed effectively, and people can and do achieve sustained recovery and lead fulfilling lives. While there might not be a one-size-fits-all cure in the sense of a single pill that makes it all go away, there are numerous evidence-based interventions that have proven highly successful in helping people overcome addiction. In fact, statistics show that addiction is treatable in a high percentage of cases when individuals receive appropriate evidence-based care. We're talking about success rates that are comparable to, or even better than, those for many other chronic medical conditions. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, consistently report that comprehensive treatment approaches can lead to significant improvements in substance use, employment, social functioning, and overall health. One of the most powerful tools in our arsenal, especially for opioid use disorder, is medication-assisted treatment, or MAT. SAMHSA reports are very clear on its efficacy. MAT, which combines medications like buprenorphine, naltrexone, or methadone with counseling and behavioral therapies, can reduce overdose deaths by as much as 50%. Furthermore, MAT has been shown to reduce relapse rates by around 30%. And significantly improve retention in treatment programs, giving people a much stronger foundation for long-term recovery. Beyond MAT, a wide range of behavioral therapies, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, motivational interviewing, and contingency management, have strong evidence supporting their effectiveness. So, the message here is one of profound hope. So, there you have it. 7 major myths about addiction, thoroughly busted with science and facts. We've seen that addiction isn't a simple choice but a complex brain disorder, that rock bottom isn't a prerequisite for recovery, and that willpower alone often isn't enough. We've also learned that addiction extends beyond just drugs and alcohol. Relapse isn't failure, it's not about weakness, and most importantly, addiction treatable. These addiction myths keep us stuck and ashamed, but now you know the truth. This knowledge is powerful, but it's even more powerful when shared. Think about how many people are still operating under these outdated and harmful misconceptions. By sharing this video, you can help bust these myths for someone who really needs to hear it, maybe someone struggling, a family member, or even just someone who wants to be better informed. Let's work together to replace stigma with understanding, and misinformation with evidence-based hope. If you found this helpful, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more myth-busting science content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.